Well, well, well. Good evening, everyone. Brian with City the Immaculata. Finally back with you. I tell you, folks, it was very close. It almost didn't happen. I almost bailed on you guys once again. I've had a couple weeks now, lingering cold, I guess it would be, maybe a little bit of a sinus infection. Bailed on my once a month book club over at our Patreon. So for those of you that were super excited, I know there was many of you lined up and waiting. I felt like Axl Rose canceling on Guns N' Roses concerts, which he used to be famous for doing. Yeah, it's just been the storm kind of settled, and then I don't know, maybe sometime last night it started to pick up again, the pressure in my head. So we'll see. I had a fun evening planned for everybody, but I kind of scrapped all of that. I said, I'm just going to show up. We'll see what happens. I don't have any, I'm not drinking any wine, so there's no celebration. And let's see if I can show you guys this. I've got an herbal tea seeping here. Wonderful herbal tea, medicinal. Going to give that a little bit more time here to I'll tell you guys actually. So the trick to herbal teas, I am a big fan of herbal teas. The trick to herbal teas is you have to have a lid, because when you're seeping an herbal tea, I know not everybody is particularly fond of naturopathy, home medicines, these kinds of things. I have always been super interested and fascinating, but you hear people like, well, that stuff just doesn't work. And you ask, well, how are you doing it? And they're doing it wrong. And it's like, well, of course, if you're going to do something wrong, it's not going to work, right? But I'm going to be sipping on this here in just a minute. But yeah, if you have an herbal tea and someone tells you it's medicinal and you don't cover it while it's seeping, you lose all the activity. You lose all the medicinal ingredients to evaporation. So get this going for you guys. I see Father John here in the comments while you're there. Feliz Navidad y prospero en año. Sí, y tú, Padre. Y tú. To you as well. Merry Christmas. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas. As you can see, I'm set up in a different location here. It's literally just the other side of the table that I usually use the prayer corner over there, but I thought it would be fun just to have the tree as a background. So let me take one sip here of this tea and then we'll get going. 2 sips rather. Oh, that's so good. That is really good. I should at some point, I don't like coming on here giving out like medical advice. It's not what my channel is for, but I have a whole laundry list of things that I'm interested in as far as like natural medicine. We're trying to set up something here where the families, as sort of like a general co-op thing, we come to rely more and more. This is actually, I guess, kind of related to the faith in somewhat, where we come to rely on each other more and more. And that may be, person has a certain talent. Maybe they're good at this, they're good at that. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to bring in like medicinal uses of herbs. So you've got an ailment, it's not that you shouldn't go to the doctor if the ailment turns to infection, but, preventative or early, if you can catch things early, or if there is just an option, everybody should have, or they should know someone that has a apothecary close to them. And that's one of the things that I'd like to do, because I keep several different herbs on hand as well. When I start to not feel well like I am today, I will eat raw garlic. That's one of the things that we'll do. Raw garlic. It's fantastic. Of course, there's things you have to do with that. And most people, culinary artists know before you prep garlic, you have to hammer it, you have to crush it, which releases the sulfate compounds inside of them, which is, you let it sit for a few minutes, and if you can eat it raw, if you can handle it raw, it's a fantastic antimicrobial properties to it as well. It's not all natural. I also take a synthetic vitamin C compound crystal, best way to take it. I'll up my doses of that. So lots of different things that I find super fascinating, but I feel like it would just bore you guys to no end if I were to talk too much about it. But anyways, so here we are coming up to not just the new year, but also a new turning the page of a new quarter century. Been thinking about that these last couple of days. I always get very reflective this time of year. Thinking about like where I was a quarter century ago. It's so insane to think in terms like that. Kind of freaks some people out, but 25 years of this century, man, here we are. We're about to close the page on it. And I was just reflecting on where I've come, where I've been, where I've come from, what's happened. The year 2000, as far as I can remember, I was in high school, just starting to drive. So I have 25 years driving experience under my belt now. And what else was going on? No cell phones. That wasn't a thing. Back in my day, it was just a lot of hanging out. We were playing a lot of music, super interested in music at that time. It was hours and like actually playing instruments. But we also listened to it as well. Spent a lot of time doing that. In some ways it's kind of strange. It feels like a different world today in some ways, and in some ways it doesn't. In some ways it feels exactly the same. About 3 years ago, it's been about 3 years now, I got rid of my smartphone. And I don't really talk about that a whole lot on here. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but there were some things that happened, and the smartphone was kind of a part of my old life that I was trying to get rid of. I was trying to sort of restart some things. So I was like, well, I have to get rid of this thing. And look, I didn't have a smartphone until I was almost 30, if not 30 years old. Kept it, for those years that I had it, and it becomes like a crutch. And it's kind of amazing like how reliant we become on something. How could I go almost 30 years of my life without this thing? And then this thing is introduced. And I feel like the first few times that we left the home, like my wife carries her phone for the most part, but when you leave the home and you don't have a phone on you, right? And you just feel kind of like almost like naked, right? Like, how did I ever do this? But the human race survived a lot without ever having recourse to a smartphone. I think of those pilgrims that got on the boats across the unknown sea, or pioneers that got in their wagons and crossed the plains, right? You got in your wagon, you'd say goodbye to family if they didn't come. And you were on your own, man. You had your family, you had your few groups of friends, the immediate family that came with you, maybe a couple brothers came along with you, and you took off to the west, and you could send letters back home, but that was a much slower form of communication. But here we are, we got these things now where we're just in constant contact with each other. And I think I don't want to come on here and be preachy. Right? It was not my intention to do that, but it's like, yeah, we seem to think that we're owed a person's attention, and we seem to think that we're owed a person's time. And you're not owed my time. I'm not owed your time. And the world continues. It's one of the things. 3 years now without that thing. I actually grabbed it today, my wife's, because I had to go over. Was going to a doctor's office to try to get something knocked out with this cold that I've had. And sitting in the waiting room, there's people around. They're all sick. It's like cringe factor when you're sitting in a waiting room. You're waiting for the germs to reach you. But yeah, most people, they're sitting there on their phones, and that's kind of a common thing now. And I have her phone, and it's feels super awkward for me to sit there and try to like flip through that thing. So yeah, I mean, you kind of it's an easy breakup once you get pretty far away from it, but it does take some time. And again, it's just amazing how addictive, how reliant we become on a piece of technology that many of us now. I know there's a lot of younger people that they're like raised on this stuff. It's all they've ever known. But even those of us, man, those of us that had 30, 40, 50 years of life, behind us when the smartphone came out, and we got addicted to it, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. So you're never really fully safe from this stuff. So yes, we are about to end the year 2025. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, a lot of people that I knew didn't make it. I've known a lot of people that didn't make it to the 25 mark. My best friend didn't make it. Of course, you lose people. I've lost grandparents and things like that. I lost my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, in the year 2000. So he didn't see much of this century at all. Lost my other grandparents in the 2010s. Lost my best friend about 3-4 years ago at this point to cancer. Didn't expect him to go, 40 years old. So yeah, we don't all make it. We don't all get to see these milestones and these turning points. So I'm thinking about what next. That's kind of one of the things that's been on my mind. What am I going to do with this channel next? I have a list of things that I want to do that will carry me for like the next 6 months. I tend to plan ahead. But I also have like an idea of like what I want the channel to be. But I also don't know if it's worthwhile to to invest too much into it, because more and more that I look, there's just a glut of content creators. And I have a few other options as far as being contributing to the faith with these years that I have left of my life, and meaningful, and ways that I think will be potentially more lasting. Some exciting things that are happening behind the scenes, not totally related to City of the Immaculata stuff. One thing I can tell you guys is the publisher did pick up my book. I've probably mentioned that. I can't remember, but if I didn't, publisher did pick up my book. We're still editing it though. It's a slow process. Then I have to index it. Another long, slow, tedious process. And then that should, I'm hope it has to be out. It'll be out, God willing, it'll be out by this time next year at the very latest. So that, it feels like a little bit more substantial, and I'm very proud of this book. It's like I wrote it in a matter of months, but it was 10 years of research and interest and dedication. And then I'm working on like 2 or 3 other books, including, I see Father Brown here mentioning the Lakota series, which I've put back, started to release those again on YouTube. I had taken them down for a little while, putting them back now. I was very like, at a certain point, you almost just have to be like, the time that I invest into these videos, the information I'm super proud of, the like quality of the content itself. But I don't have a lot of time to invest, and I don't have a lot of money that I want to invest in production. And production, if those of you guys that are making content creators out there, those of you guys that are doing this kind of stuff, production's what sells. It's not the content. And that's a sad thing. The Catholic Church is the same way. Catholic Church, the content creators within the Catholic Church, the stuff that has the best productions gets the most views. So I do these little like cheap videos with some PowerPoint slides and me recording with all of my uhs and ums along the way. And, maybe 200-300 people will watch it. And it's like, okay, well, was that really worth it? But I do spend a lot of time on the actual content that I put in there, which I feel like is the thing that's kind of lacking in a lot of Catholic media. There's a glut of content, but there is a lacuna of really good quality. And uh, yeah, I labored over that work on the Lakota, that series, and I'm actually working on a book right now on that very subject, the Jesuits and the work that they did among the Lakota. And it's proven to be a very difficult book to write, mind you. I have to, excuse me, I have to, I have to kind of mine these sources, both Jesuit sources and what we can gather of the Lakota mindset at these times, and then extract from it the sort of oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I I have an overall thesis, and I think I have a strong enough grasp on the subject. I believe I can prove my thesis, but I don't have like a lot of other people that I because nobody's done this work. So I can't turn to other people for like validation of my sources because there's a lot of conflicting. For example, there's a certain animosity and anger towards the Catholic Church from some members of some tribes. Not so by far. A lot of the tribes really know the difference between the work, the good work that the good Catholics did among the reservations versus, say, some of the work that other Europeans did. Um, and but sifting through some of that, okay, well, like, it's like, well, what is actually a fair, what's a fair contention that, say, this Lakota group over here has the like what the Oglalas, something maybe that they had happen to them. That's a fair point of contention versus like the people that are just anti-colonialist or anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, anti-European in general. So trying to sift through those polemics is very challenging. And I don't know, I don't have any kind of time frame on when I'm actually going to be able to finish that book. But it's a wonderful subject. I'm glad you enjoyed the videos, Father. It's the videos are like a very, 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 it's a totally different thing making a video or especially like speaking off the cuff like this than it is to sit down and research and write a book. But I think I actually have a really good book in the making there that you're not going to find a lot of other. There's a few books out there on the subject, but none that are going to be covering it from the angle that I expect to cover it from, which is really going to be an examination of the Lakota worldview and the Catholic worldview and where they sort of met and how they were um, similar in many ways, surprising ways, the way that they were similar, and the sort of ingenuity that these Jesuits had towards certain practices and certain customs and beliefs, and the compatibility, as well as the clear cases where you have to expunge certain things, certain incorrect beliefs and patterns of thought, and these kinds of things. And the Jesuits, that stock of those Jesuits that were involved in the missionary work were very um, keen to make those distinctions quite well. So, oh no, I'm sorry. So, are you asking here? I see Father Brown's asking a question. The book on mission. Yes. So the book is called Enculturation: How the Catholic Church Converts the World, and there's a two sections of the book. The first section is going to be a sort of theological justification for enculturation because it's such a maligned word and concept. And to be fair, it has been hijacked by people that really just want to syncretize the faith. And then the second part is a historical examination of acculturation from the earliest period of the church right on up to the modern day. And then I sort of end uh, with an examination of the challenges and the difficulties faced with the process, a long process like enculturation. And the Lakota were very much wrapped up in all of that. The Lakota situation was in some ways a look at the best of and the worst of modern day missionary efforts. And by the worst of, I don't even necessarily mean that the church had like the worst of it. It's just that there was a lot of factors, especially factors that were involved with the U.S. government or the Canadian government for that matter. But I'm not going into that in this book. But um, and the sort of sabotage that they pulled on the missionary work. So, yeah, it's a very complex subject. So, needless to say, it's taken me a while. So, yeah, just thinking about like what I'm going to be doing with the channel next. We are slated finally to be going to our new apartment. I'm not like, fingers crossed. I don't know when that's actually going to happen. It's slated for about four months from now. I'll be super excited. The question is though, when I get there, there will be a little bit more space. We've been kind of cramped up in this apartment. This is a very small, like studio kind of apartment. And the question is, when we get over there, I'll have a little bit more space. And do I want to take the time, invest my time in setting up something a little bit nicer? Maybe make it look a little bit more professional. Maybe get a nicer camera. I don't know. I have a nice camera actually, but it's not really made for recordings like this. It's not really made for uh, doing this kind of live. It's really not the best for that. But I think that might be something that's worth my consideration, because that's the thing, right? Like, you have to have something where the production looks good. One thing I will not be doing, and I can't bring myself to do it, and I won't be doing it. If I ever do it, then you guys have every right to come on here and call me out and laugh at me and make fun of me, is doing the thumbnails with the facial expressions. And I know that's a gimmick. I get it. Triggers the algorithms. It brings in viewers, but I can't, the like looking surprised, or the like, what is it? Like the grimace, the looking serious, and it's like a stock. I guess I think they sit down at one go and just do stock pictures of their facial expressions, and then, oh, this video is supposed to be funny, so it's me laughing, or this one's me shocked. I can't do it, guys. I can't bring myself to that level of inauthenticity. There's just something there's like, I get a visceral gut reaction when I see, especially people that like I know and kind of respect. And I know there's some people that do it kind of tongue in cheek, and maybe that's a little bit better, but can't do it. But I could probably, and I also won't do the bookshelf. Everybody's got a bookshelf. You know who I respect because he doesn't use a bookshelf is William Albright. He's always got, like, it's like this. This has been his background. It's just a white wall for his entire time, and I just think that's great. Where everybody else, it's like so professional, and they're dressed up, and the books are behind them, and it's like, oh, guys, come on. Like, I know, there's like it just seems so performative. That's all it is. And I'm not trying to be. I guess I'm going to be turning into like maybe I blame the illness. Just a curmudgeon here tonight, railing about the state of things, but I do think we're in a bit of a bad way for some of the content creation out there. I want to be able to bring this stuff, that the little bit of insightful knowledge that I have, that I could bring to a channel like this, bring to you guys in such a way that it's impactful and reaches a little bit of a. Now, I know my stuff is a little dense. It's going to be a little bit more niche, and not going to have a whole lot of people that are, I'm not going to bring in like, what's a channel out there? I don't know. Mad Frat, right? Where he's doing the interviews and he's got perfect studio and everything's just right. Like, I'll never reach that. And I don't want to get to that level. I like the intimacy of a smaller channel, but would like to get a little bit more than what I've been getting recently. And there's been some stagnation with growth of the channel. I still haven't, like, I was moving up along fine, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. And it's a little frustrating. I mean, I've been at this for several years, and you see other people come up and they're repeating the same thing that's been repeated 100 times, and their channel just like surpasses your own. I think it's a little bit. See, Father here talking about some of the pettiness. Maybe it's a little bit petty on my part to like to sort of complain about these things, but there's some wonderful people. I always acknowledge this doing wonderful things, and we should be supporting them. They say that talent usually ends up rising to the top anyways, or at the very least, when it's all said and done, those who were the most talented, who had the most useful things, is the things that are people remember and that sort of stick. I There's quite a few people that contributed to whatever literature or theology or radio, and their impact wasn't really felt until like long after they were gone. So that's something to consider as well too. I do think there is a lack of greatness though. I think there's a lack of greatness. Everybody's got a microphone now. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got a podcast. Is the world gonna is this the end of civilization? Is this the end of Western civilization? Is the podcast? I have to wonder sometimes because it's like you woke up one day and it was I did it myself. I said, look, I'm going to start a podcast, talk about some of this Franciscan stuff that I like, and yeah, now everybody's doing it, but it's like the the quality. There's so many people that are doing it that are just. I'm not even just talking about Catholic. I want to be charitable to my Catholic brothers and sisters that are out there making work, and especially if they're working hard at it. But there's just such a glut of podcasts and commentators, and now the commentators are commentating on the commentary, and they're interviewing the interviewees, and it's kind of like, okay, well, is the world even like functioning anymore, or is everybody just doing this? Like, is this going to be the end? Everything's going to go to AI. All the mechanical stuff in the world is going to go to AI, and then everybody's just going to be. This is going to be it. It's going to be all that's left for human beings to do. At the same time, maybe there's some good in it, in the fact that like I see a lot of younger men, for example, that will start these like channels, and they're basically on there with like other men, and it's almost like like the old gentle like the way that these organizations, these fraternal organizations used to work, like the Knights of Columbus or something like that, where like young men don't get together in person anymore like that as much as they used to. But maybe this is where they're getting that need met, is through these online, and that's a good thing. So let's see, where am I at? So I told you guys about the books, told you about the move. I do have some really good, I think, really good stuff coming up. I'm about to unleash on YouTube. I don't know, you never know on YouTube how this stuff is going to go, like what effect it's going to have. It's been on my Patreon now for several months. A series of videos that I did. Speaking of quality videos with low production value, I did these videos on the errors of orthodoxy, and I think it's the best stuff online. Okay, maybe not online. I think it's the best stuff you're going to find on, like, once it's on YouTube, about what are the problems with orthodoxy, because so much of the stuff that I see people complaining about the Orthodox is not it's not the reason I'm not Orthodox. In fact, some of the things that people complain about the Orthodox are things I actually appreciate and like about the Orthodox. And were they to come into communion with us, I would not like to see them lose those attributes. In fact, I would like to see them bring those attributes with them into the Catholic Church, and maybe, just maybe, influence us in a positive way, which I think is perfectly possible to do. And vice versa. There's a lot of things about the West and the Western Church that I like, that I think the Orthodox lack. but it was 7 videos. It was the road to 1054, the events leading up to the Great Schism. One of those is actually already on YouTube, and it's called The Fight for Land. So I'm setting up the case of why the Great Schism even happened. The fight for land, and I follow that up with the road to 1054, the fight for the faith, which is the theological arguments around what happened at the Great Schism. The next video that I did was called the Azymes controversy. Did the Orthodox concede this debate? And the debate is whether or not this reason, basically it's the reason that the Orthodox split from the Catholic Church. It wasn't over the filioque, not so much. The filioque was there, it was a problem. That's not why the schism happened. It wasn't over the papacy. The papacy was not an issue until honestly much later. And the papacy really doesn't become an issue until I think that the Orthodox took a lesson from the page of the Protestants and really made the papacy the sort of boogeyman. They sort of co-opted that from the Protestants. But anyways, the real challenge, the real problem with the Catholic Church that the Orthodox had was the issue of our use of unleavened bread. And so the case that I'm making in this, and I think it's a pretty down pat, irrefutable debate, if you will. I think we clearly are on the right of this in terms of how it's set up, because for the first 3, 4, 5 centuries of the schism, 1054 moving forward about 5 centuries, the polemics and the back and forth about the unleavened bread was always, it was the top for a long time, and then it was always among the top. And then slowly the Orthodox stopped debating it. And they start debating other things, more and more the filioque, more and more the papacy. And they never concede on the Azymes. They just sort of drop it. And sort of by the 19th, 20th century, it's like gone completely, without ever having conceded, hey guys, like we probably shouldn't have schismed over that. So my question about that is then, did the Orthodox concede the debate? Because if the answer is yes, then the reason for the schism is basically the actual theological justification for the schism. If you want to demarcate 1054 as the moment of the schism, which many Orthodox do, then your reason, your justification for it at that time, you've conceded. If the answer is no, that the debate has not been conceded, then the question is, well, then why haven't you discussed it with us in 200 years, 300 years? Why has it disappeared? Where are all the debates about Azymes? Where's it at? There are none. So it's really a dilemma for them, because if they want to pick it up, I know occasionally they'll bring it up in their polemics, but if they want to start debating it, or even worse, if they want to pick it up again at any kind of like official capacity, because if you go through, and we go through these in the videos, we've had joint dialogues with the Orthodox Church. And I'm not just talking about one rogue patriarch over here who's an ecumenist heretic. Like the body of the Orthodox Church for over 100 years, we've been in serious dialogue with them, and the Azymes issues has never risen to the point of even making it into the joint lateral discussions that we've been having. And so if you look at, like, say, for example, more recently, something like the Synod of Ravenna or the Synod of Chieti, they go through like, hey, these are the things that are barring us from communion. These are the problems that we still have. Azymes nowhere in there. So if they didn't concede it, they've dropped it for 200 years. how are we ever supposed to have good faith discussions? It's like, you're going to go in with somebody and they're going to keep their cards to their chest, and you're walking in with good faith that everything's going to be kind of laid out. These are our problems. We're going to work through this stuff, but they're going to keep this card to their chest, and they're only going to lay it out when it's convenient. Like, so that's a serious problem that they have. So that's the third video. The fourth video is on the great, and I use great loosely there, great in the true sense of the word, the great Sultan Mehmed II, and his conquering of Constantinople, and his confiscation not only of the city but of the church and its property and its episcopate. And he revamps the Orthodox ecclesiology. So that one's called Mehmed, Caesaropapism, and the making of the Orthodox Church. Then I have one called Peter the Aleut, Martyr or Myth, which is sure to not win me many friends. Then I have one, Peter the Aleut being the Inuits from Alaska who was purportedly, according to Orthodox hagiography, tortured and martyred by Jesuit priests, nonetheless. Father Brown, if you're still in the audience, they blamed you guys, even though there were no Jesuits in California at the time of Peter's supposed death at the hands of the Spanish. Be that as it may, I acknowledge that could be just a fault in the knowledge of the person that handed down this hagiographic story of Peter the Aleut, and we go into like the actual sources, because I think there's a claim to be made about the fact that, like, oh, you don't even remember which order it was that happened to like torture this poor Inuit that you have now recognized as a saint. I don't know if you guys have like noticed recently, but the Jesuits and the Franciscans don't exactly dress the same. So there's that, and everybody knew who the Spanish Franciscans were. The Russians, they weren't idiots. So anyways, I go into the whole thing, and I actually go into the more like what I think are the meatier challenges of the story. And that's going to be the fourth video. Then there's going to be the last two are probably my favorite videos, and I don't know like what kind of traction these are going to have. I don't know what kind of interest they're going to garner. Typically on my channel, whenever it's something that has to do with the Orthodox, it tends to get the most views, which is, make of that what you will. When I talk about the Protestants or when I talk about Orthodox, those videos get the most views. If I talk about Catholics, no Catholics ever seem to want to tune in. Thus, my belief that all of this stuff is really just not the best for us. But anyways, the last two, it's going to be, the first one is called Against the Latins, the Orthodoxy as Reactionism. Now, the last two are a little bit more complex in terms of the case that I'm making, but I think if people stick with it and they're able to watch it, I think they're really good videos. Again, low production value, but a lot of content. And so Against the Latins, Orthodoxy as Reactionism is basically a thing where we examine the ecumenist movement. And I know a lot of this stuff is like Western Catholics, Western Christians, Westerners in general aren't really familiar with some of the nuances of what's actually going on in the East, because it's just never been in our radar. But for the last 100 years, there's been a movement in the Orthodox Church, an ecumenical movement that has really kind of torn the Orthodoxy asunder. And just been really, really awful. Some of the disintegration of the relationship between the autocephalous churches, because look, like, we don't, as Catholics, as Christians, we shouldn't gloat when we see the Patriarch of Moscow and the Patriarch of Constantinople in schism from one another. Like it's the yay that justifies us. Like that's a tragedy. Whenever there's further disintegration of the Catholic communions, it's just more less. It's less likely that there will ever be unity among the churches again. It makes it much less likely because when you start dealing with this factionalism that sort of arises. But be that as it may, orthodoxy as reactionism is this kind of case about the Orthodox that are in schism from the major Orthodox bodies, who a lot of you people don't know about, but there's the old calendarists and some of these other groups, the true Orthodox Church as they're known. And I go into kind of the argument that they're making. And and this is one of the reasons I'm not Orthodox, because in many of their true Orthodox, quote unquote, the schismatic Orthodox that are not in communion with the major bodies of Orthodox churches, it's not completely unlike, say, what you find in Catholicism with like SSPX or even the Sedevacantists. There's degrees of schism in these Orthodox groups as well. But for those groups that are part of this umbrella of the true Orthodox, those that are in schism, their arguments, I think, are actually much more consistent with, like, say, the kind of arguments that you're finding in the so-called orthobro sphere, Jay Dyer and Peter Heers and whoever the other ones are that are out there doing these things online. And the way that Jay Dyer and them talk, and look, I mean, I got a video I was going to make on Dyer and what happened with him recently, where some Orthodox priests and maybe even the bishop came out against him, spoke out publicly against him. So it's one of the things that I have kind of lined up that I wanted to present for you guys in the next few weeks or months or whatever, kind of like a reaction to that. And like the arguments that Jay will make is that, well, look, he'll say, look, I'm in communion with Rokor, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, because they're the ones that are most consistent. But it's a very much like the SSPX kind of thing, where they kind of want their cake and eat it too. If you actually take the SSPX argument to its logical conclusion, then I think it actually does lead to Sedevacantism logically. Now, granted, I'm not saying I would like to see people be SSPX go even further, but I'm just saying the logical conclusions of the arguments that they're making, I think, more consistently would lead one to Sedevacantism than they would this sort of like murky in-between thing. And that's kind of what like Rokor is doing, because Rokor wants to say, well, ecumenism is heresy, which they do say. They actually have a condemnation, an anathema attached to ecumenism. But while they do that, they also have brought themselves back into communion with the ecumenicists. So they are in this like weird place where they're a little bit more within the body than, say, the SSPX would be with the Catholic Church, but they still believe that the body, the worldwide body of Orthodox, are in heresy. So at that point, I think the more consistent, again, logical conclusion would lead one to believe that the true Orthodox Church, the one that says, no, we are not in communion with heretics. The worldwide Orthodox body is involved in ecumenism, which, along with Rokor, we agree is heresy. But unlike Rokor, we're more consistent. We're not going to be in communion with that. But none of those guys, if you look at the Ortho Bros, as far as I know, there might be one or two that are popular, but none of them are actually in the true Orthodox Church. They're all in like the Church of Antioch, or I think they all would really like to be in Rokor, but it's really, you're just playing with like special pleading at that point. And I think there's this like attempt to just manifest the reality they want. If they manifest hard enough, they'll create that solid Rokor Orthodox Church out of the OCA But yeah, good luck on that. Anyways, we go into that into a lot of depth as well. The final video is called Losky Romanides and the Making of Modern Orthodoxy, which is a furtherance of that, but it's more of how through the 20th century, these movements of like the Neo-Parisians and the Neo-Greeks lead to what I believe makes up this modern contingency of the so-called Ortho Bros. So I'll be dumping those in the next few weeks here. They've been over on patreon.com/City of the Immaculata. Several of them are free over there now if you were to join up with the free membership, not even paid. The last few ones are still, I think, under the paywall, but I've been slowly transitioning them over to free on Patreon, and then I'm going to eventually release them to YouTube because I know some of you guys, you just don't want to go to a different platform, and that's fine. And then, yeah, I've got a list, man. I've got a whole list of other things that I've got planned to make for you guys, and I'm really excited. I'm excited about all of it. I've got another series that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to save talking about that one, I think, for a few days. But anyways, I didn't want to come on here on the actual eve of New Year's because I'd like to spend that with my family, and you guys should be with your families too. You shouldn't be on YouTube watching live content creators. You should be out doing fun things. So, but I did want to come on here, kind of wrap the year up with you all. It was kind of a bust at the end here. We did have a nice Christmas, though. I felt better for Christmas Day. We're going to pick it up again. The good old 2026, starting a new quarter of the century, man. I hope those of us that are of the appropriate ages will all live to see the next quarter of a century through to the end. I will. Gosh, how old will I even be? Yeah, I mean, I'll be older. I won't be that old. I won't be as old. I won't even be. My dad is not even 25 years older than me, so I'll be younger than my dad is right now. That's kind of fun to think about. Anyways, yeah, I hope you guys had a great Christmas. I hope everyone is feeling well, doing well. Let's see. I see here I'll be 80 when that happens. Man, I tell you, we're all racing to the end, aren't we? God willing, we all live to be 80 years old. My grandfather got to see his 80s, and I was, there was so much wisdom that I gathered from him in this last few years, man. God willing, we all get to see 80s, and we have our relative health. I know the body starts to fail progressively, slowly, hopefully, for most of us. But, it's a true gift. It's a true gift to live to see those kinds of years. I didn't look 25 years ago. I'm in high school. I never thought. You don't think when you're in high school you're going to see. I didn't. You don't think about it. I didn't envision the year 2025. Here we are. And so much as I did envision it, I don't know what I envisioned. I think it was something that was totally different than what it turned out to be. But like I said, not everybody made it. I lost some people this year. I lost an uncle this year, rather tragically. So not everybody gets to go there, but we're all headed in the same direction. None of us get out of here alive. But that's what hope is all about. So anyways, guys, I guess without further ado, let me just go through the chat here one more time. I joined the Jesuits half my life ago and then ordained half of my time in the Jesuits and working at the Jesuit high school, and now president for half the time of the Jesuit high school. Lots of symmetry this year. I tell you what's funny is I was thinking about this even just before I went on. Some of those, you're talking about like the halves and the quarters and things like that. Like I was thinking about it in those terms, and my wife actually pointed something out too. She said, I've known her now for more of this century than I didn't know her. I didn't know her at the beginning of the 2000s, but I've known her now a longer period of time than I didn't know her in terms of this century. But I was also thinking, like, I had these like great friends that I met around 2000, and you're in that young, you know, teen, early 20s periods of your life, and uh, formed like really great bonds, really great friendships, lifelong friendships that you know, you think is going to last forever. But looking back on it, the time that I really spent like close with those group of people wasn't a very long time, you know. And now it's been more time. There's been more time in terms of the years since that I had that. So, like, let's say, for example, I had a good friend made in 2000. He and I hung out for 3 or 4 years, right? That's only 4 years out of a 25-year span of time. So I have all those other years, you know. There's 21 years where I wasn't hanging, but those like 4 years were so formative and they were so impactful that it's a huge part of who I am, you know. And then, like I said, the friend that I lost 2, 3 years ago, he and I were like super close for a long time, 5 or 6 years. And then we kind of didn't hang out that much. And then I started to hang out with him again for a little while. And then not as much again. But it's like those short years are so formative that it feels like it was a longer period of time than what it actually was. And it's been like, now that I'm thinking about it, it's been much more time since, significantly more time since than some of those periods of time that I spent with those people. But anyways, I will see you guys in the new year, and you know, pray for me. I start feeling a little bit better. I can even see it. It's like in my. There was the guy. I can't even think what they're calling him. They're calling him, like, you young guys out there know what I'm talking about. They call it like looks maxing or something like that. He took a hammer to his jaw to make himself look better. Go figure. And at first I was like, oh, I don't. Of course, that's crazy. You're an insane person. But you get a sinus infection. And yeah, I want to take a hammer to my face sometimes. So I sympathize with it, not for the looks maxing thing, but just for the like to break it up, to break up this like horrible feeling. Actually, the herbal tea helped a whole lot. So, but anyways, your prayers would be appreciated, and I will continue to pray for you all, and I will continue to make the best stuff that I could possibly make, and hopefully the changes that are coming are changes you guys will appreciate and enjoy. And yeah, you guys look forward to those videos coming out. I think you'll especially like the ones on orthodoxy. So anyways, guys, that's it. That's it for City of the Immaculata this year, 2025. Third year of my doing this. In the books, all wrapped up. I will see you guys next year.
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Instant Folgers taste good as fresh perked.
This is Earth, the year 2100. This is the headquarters of Space Patrol. And men from Earth, Mars, and Venus live and work there as guardians of peace.
In the nation's capital, President Johnson today welcomed British Prime Minister Douglas Hume.